this. Gradey Dick, bring it in! Hello!
Gradey Dick's sophomore campaign opened with the kind of numbers that turn heads around the league. Over the first 30 games, he averaged 17 points per night, a clear sign that his summer work translated into on-court production. That early scoring burst wasn't just volume, it came within the flow of the offense, with Dick running off screens, relocating, and punishing defenders for even a half-second lapse. He looked confident in his mechanics, shot prep, and release timing, which are all critical for a high-volume shooter. The Raptors used him more aggressively in staggered screens and pin downs, and he converted at a clip that made him one of their most reliable weapons. That start also revealed how comfortable he was as a second-year player compared to his rookie jitters. Gradey also closed the season effectively. In February, his final full month before a hyperextended right knee shut him down, Dick caught fire from beyond the arc, drilling 38% of his threes on 5 attempts per game. That kind of volume and efficiency in the heart of the season signals more than a hot streak. It's evidence of a player whose shooting can warp a defense's game plan. What made it impressive was the balance in his footwork and the smoothness of his release under pressure, showing a repeatable stroke rather than a one-off run. For a second-year player, that level of consistency is a promising indicator of long-term growth and adaptability. It also portrays Gradey's dedication, honing his mechanics, mastering the nuances of coming off pin downs, and syncing up with ball handlers to be in the right spot at the right time. When Dick's shooting like that, Toronto's spacing sharpens dramatically, and their half-court offense looks far less congested. In today's pace and space environment, that kind of weapon isn't just nice to have, it's essential. That February surge gave him a glimpse of the foundation on which the rest of his game can be built. While his perimeter numbers have been solid, Dick's finishing inside the arc has been more uneven. He converted 58% from 0 to 3 feet last season, which represented a 5-point drop from his rookie campaign. That dip matters because it shows defenses have begun to close out under control and force them into tougher, more contested looks at the rim. It also suggests that his body strength and balance, key elements for absorbing contact, weren't as sharp later in the year. A more complete offensive player can threaten both the arc and the paint, which keeps defenders guessing and opens up foul drawing opportunities. Improving his finishing touch, craft, and strength will make his shooting gravity even more dangerous. If opponents have to respect Dick for his cuts and attacks off the bounce, they can't simply run him off the line and expect him to fizzle inside. For Dick to reach quote-unquote special marksman status, adding that inside-the-arc reliability is almost as important as his three-point clip. On the other side of the ball, Dick's sophomore season exposed some vulnerabilities. Early on, his improved strength allowed him to hold his ground better on switches and closeouts, but as the grind of the season wore on, that strength seemed to fade. As a result, opposing offenses started actively hunting him in matchups, forcing him into isolations or off-ball scrambles where his fatigue showed. According to on-off metrics, Toronto's defense was nearly 6 points per 100 possessions better with him on the bench, a stark indicator of his impact. That kind of number doesn't mean he can't defend, but it does highlight how costly lapses can be when he's playing big minutes. Conditioning, functional strength, and anticipation all play roles in changing that narrative. The Raptors will need to shield him with better schemes or lineups until he develops into a passable defender. Without at least baseline defensive competence, his offensive gifts won't shine as brightly in high-stakes games. One underrated aspect of being an elite off-ball shooter is the physical toll it takes. Dick ranked third on the Raptors in distance traveled per game offensively in 2024-25, and first in distance traveled per game defensively, according to Raptors Republic, meaning he was constantly running, cutting, and chasing. That kind of mileage can sap legs, which directly affects shooting percentages and defensive effort as the season progresses. Improving conditioning and strength becomes crucial not just for injury prevention, but for sustaining shooting mechanics and lateral quickness deep into the year. The best movement shooters pair skill with elite fitness so they can run defenders ragged without their own performance dipping. Dick's willingness to embrace that workload is a positive sign, but hopefully he had an off-season plan that lets him maintain his base all year. More efficient routes, smarter usage, and a deeper rotation could also keep him fresh. If he can marry his shooting talent with year-long conditioning, his impact skyrockets. Dick's shooting splits tell a story about opportunity. He hit an elite 45% on 111 unguarded threes, but 31% on 137 guarded threes. A massive gap that shows how much context matters. Part of that is shot selection, learning to pass up a contested look and relocate for a better one, but part of it was the offense's inability to generate enough clean shots for him. Because without a true top-tier star wing to draw attention, defenses could stick closer to him and limit his open looks. With Brandon Ingram entering the fold, the floor should open up dramatically for Dick. More double teams on Ingram means more kickouts and rotations, which is exactly the environment where a shooter like Dick thrives. That synergy could push his overall three-point percentage into the 40-plus range if he maintains his mechanics. Better looks also means fewer forced drives, which may help his finishing numbers rebound. The outline of a special marksman is already there. High volume, high percentage shooting when unguarded, comfort running off multiple actions, and enough confidence to let it fly. What separates good shooters from quote-unquote gravity shooters is how relentlessly they move, how quickly they release, and how well they punish overplays with counters. Dick already checks the movement box, and his release is compact enough to be sped up further. Adding strength, conditioning, and finishing will force defenders into impossible choices: trail him and risk a blow-by, or go under and give up a three. If he makes the aforementioned upgrades, he can evolve from a complementary piece into a central offensive weapon who bends defenses simply by being on the court. That's the kind of profile that makes lineups hum, even without the ball in his hands. It also makes him invaluable in the playoffs, where half-court execution and spacing decide series. All signs point to a player who, with the right development, can reach that tier. If you're looking for a comparison, think of a blend between classic movement shooters and modern two-way wings. Dick may never reach Klay Thompson's defensive chops, but the off-ball movement and quick trigger shooting could approach that archetype. Another comp might be Duncan Robinson or Kevin Huerter, players whose presence alone warps defenses even when they aren't scoring. Ingram's arrival creates an ecosystem similar to what those shooters have benefited from, a star who draws doubles and gives them room to operate. If Dick can also add some playmaking and reliable finishing, his ceiling climbs even higher into quote-unquote elite offensive engine territory rather than just quote-unquote specialist territory. The combination of age, skill base, and opportunity makes this more than wishful thinking. Toronto's development program has produced multi-dimensional players before, and Dick's shooting talent is a premium tool to build around. In time, he could become the kind of marksman who not only spaces the floor, but tilts playoff defenses, a weapon teams have to game plan for every night.